Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the alarms started screaming across Liberty Prime Station. The massive orbital platform that guarded Earth's northern approach had been quiet for months, monitoring routine shipping traffic and checking asteroid mining reports. Jake set down his cup and rushed to the command center where his crew was staring at their screens in shock. "Sir, you need to see this," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, her voice shaking. "Something big just dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter." The main display showed what looked like a small moon moving toward Earth. As the sensors focused, Jake realized it wasn't a moon at all. It was a ship, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Then another appeared, and another. Within minutes, the display showed dozens of massive vessels heading straight for Earth. "Get me President Carter right now," Jake ordered. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. In 20 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. Down on Earth, President Lisa Carter was in a meeting about trade agreements when her security chief burst through the door. "Madam President, we have a situation. Alien ships are approaching Earth." Lisa felt the blood drain from her face. Every child on Earth had grown up with stories about what might happen if hostile aliens ever found them. Most people thought it was just science fiction. Lisa knew better. She had access to classified files that spoke of ancient signals, strange artifacts found in deep space, and the constant fear that humanity might not be alone. "How many ships?" she asked. "Over 3,000 and counting, ma'am. The emergency session of the United Earth Council was called within an hour." Representatives from every nation and colony gathered in the secure chamber beneath Geneva. The mood was grim as General Alex Rodriguez presented what they knew. "The ships are massive, each one several kilometers long. They're using technology we don't understand, and they're not responding to any of our communications. Our best estimates suggest they could destroy every major city on Earth within hours if they wanted to." As if summoned by his words, every screen in the room suddenly filled with an alien face. The creature had blue-gray skin, 4 eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English. "People of Earth, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world now falls under our domain. You have exactly 72 hours to surrender completely, disable all weapons, ground all spacecraft, and prepare to accept Zephyrian rule. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your planet." The image changed to show burning worlds, cities reduced to glass, and millions of beings in chains. 17. Species have learned to obey the Zephyrian Empire. You will be the 18th. Submit. And your people will be allowed to live as workers in our great civilization. Resist, and you will join the dead worlds that thought they could stand against us. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. General Rodriguez spoke first. "We have to surrender. Look at what they did to those other worlds. We can't fight something like this." "We can't just give up," argued Senator Paul Bennett from the Mars colonies. "If we surrender, we become slaves forever. At least if we fight, we die free." President Carter looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. Some showed fear, others anger, but all showed the weight of an impossible decision. "What are our military options?" "Limited," Rodriguez admitted. "Our entire space fleet has maybe 200 ships. Most of them are cargo haulers with light weapons. Against 3,000 alien warships, we'd last about 10 minutes. Dr. Maya Singh from the Department of Advanced Research had been quiet throughout the meeting. She was a small woman with gray hair who usually worked on theoretical physics projects that most people didn't understand. Now she stood up slowly. "There is something else," she said carefully. "Something I need to show you. But it has to be in person, and it has to be now." President Carter studied the scientist's face. Maya had been working on classified projects for 30 years. If she had something that might help, Lisa needed to know about it. "What kind of something?" Lisa asked. "The kind that might give us a chance," Maya replied. "But we need to move quickly. The briefing has to happen at Mount Cheyenne, and it can't wait." As the council session broke up, news of the alien ultimatum spread across Earth. Panic gripped the major cities as people tried to flee to the countryside. Stock markets crashed. Religious leaders called for prayer while military bases went to high alert. Captain Morrison watched it all from Liberty Prime as the alien fleet moved closer to Earth. The massive ships took positions around the planet like a closing fist. There was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. But deep in the asteroid belt, in the cold darkness between worlds, something ancient began to stir. Signals passed between hidden installations that had waited decades for this moment. The Zephyrians thought they knew everything about human capabilities. They were about to learn how wrong they were. President Carter followed Dr. Maya Singh down into the depths of Mount Cheyenne, through corridors she had never seen before. The elevator descended for what felt like forever, passing level after level of rock and steel. General Rodriguez and Senator Bennett walked behind them, all sworn to secrecy about whatever they were about to witness. "How deep does this go?" Lisa asked as the elevator continued downward. "Deep enough," Maya replied. "We've been building this facility for 50 years. Most presidents never saw it. Most generals never knew it existed. But today, everything changes." The elevator finally stopped, and the doors opened onto a massive underground chamber that stretched beyond sight. The ceiling was hundreds of feet high and filled with holographic displays showing star charts, ship designs, and tactical formations. Hundreds of people in military uniforms worked at stations throughout the cavern. "Welcome to Project Nightfall," Maya said. "This is where we've been preparing for today." Colonel Kate Sullivan approached them. She was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and the bearing of someone who had commanded troops in battle. But Lisa had never heard of her before. "Madam President," Kate said with a salute, "I'm the commanding officer of humanity's real defense fleet." "Real defense fleet?" Lisa asked. "What does that mean?" Maya led them to a massive display screen that showed the solar system. Thousands of small dots moved between the planets, but these weren't marked on any official navigation charts. "For the past 50 years, we've been building ships," Maya explained. "Not the cargo haulers and patrol boats that everyone knows about. Real warships. 10,000 of them." Lisa stared at the display in shock. 10,000 ships? Where? How? "Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt," Kate answered. "Construction facilities on the dark side of the moon. Manufacturing plants on moons nobody cares about. We've been building the Black Armada piece by piece, waiting for the day we'd need it." General Rodriguez was studying the technical specifications that appeared on nearby screens. "These ships use technology I've never seen before." "Where did this come from?" Maya smiled grimly. "Earth has been visited before, General. Not by conquerors like the Zephyrians, but by refugees, species that escaped their empire and came to us for help. In exchange for sanctuary, they shared their knowledge." The displays showed hidden colonies throughout human space. Entire populations of alien refugees living in secret bases, working alongside humans to prepare for the day the Zephyrian Empire would find Earth. "The Kolani taught us stealth technology," Maya continued. "The Vex showed us how to build quantum weapons. The Theron gave us shield generators that can deflect anything the Zephyrians have. We've been learning and building and preparing." Senator Bennett was looking at crew rosters. "Who's flying these ships? I see names I don't recognize." "Volunteers," Kate replied. "People who've been training in secret for decades, families who've dedicated their lives to this project. Entire communities living in the outer system, preparing for a war that most of humanity didn't know was coming." Commander Paul Bennett stepped forward. Lisa noticed he had the same last name as the senator, but they didn't seem to know each other. "I command the Advanced Scout Squadron," Paul said. "My crews have been training in deep space for 15 years. We know every weakness in Zephyrian ship design because we've been studying the wrecks of worlds they've conquered." The displays changed to show detailed plans of Zephyrian vessels. Every weapon system, every shield generator, every structural weakness was marked and analyzed. "They think they're facing primitive humans with simple weapons," Maya explained. "They have no idea what we've really built. The ships they see around Earth are just for show. The real fleet is invisible to their sensors." Lisa felt overwhelmed by the scale of what she was seeing. "Why wasn't I told about this before?" "Because the project is bigger than any one person," Maya replied. "Even bigger than any one government. If the Zephyrians had spies on Earth, we couldn't risk them learning the truth. The fewer people who knew, the safer the secret." Kate activated another display showing real-time positions of Black Armada ships. They were already moving into attack formations around Earth. Invisible to Zephyrian sensors but ready to strike. "The plan is simple," Kate explained. "We let them think we're surrendering. They'll move their ships into occupation positions, confident and relaxed. Then we hit them with everything we've got." "What about casualties?" Rodriguez asked. "If this goes wrong, they'll destroy Earth. If we surrender, Earth dies slowly as a slave world," Paul replied. "If we fight and lose, Earth dies quickly but free. If we fight and win, Earth survives and the galaxy learns that the Zephyrian Empire can be beaten." Maya brought up images from refugee testimonies. Every species that surrendered to the Zephyrians was eventually worked to death or used for experiments. Surrender isn't survival, General. It's just a slower form of extinction. President Carter looked around at the faces of people who had dedicated their lives to this moment. These weren't politicians or bureaucrats. They were soldiers and scientists and engineers who had spent decades preparing for a war they hoped would never come. "How many people know about this?" she asked. "About 500,000 throughout human space," Kate replied. "All volunteers, all sworn to secrecy, all ready to die for the chance to keep humanity free." Lisa thought about the 3,000 Zephyrian ships orbiting Earth. Even with 10,000 hidden vessels, the odds seemed impossible. "Can we really win this?" she asked. Maya's eyes were hard as steel. "We're about to find out. The Zephyrians gave us 72 hours. We're going to use every minute to get our ships in position. When we strike, it needs to be perfect." Far above them, the Zephyrian fleet continued its slow approach to Earth. Admiral Kethvar was already planning victory celebrations and deciding which human cities would become administrative centers for the new slave world. He had no idea that in the darkness between the stars, 10,000 human warships were moving like ghosts toward their targets. 12 hours remained when President Carter appeared on every screen across Earth. Her face showed defeat and resignation as she spoke to the Zephyrian fleet commander. "Admiral Kethvar, after careful consideration, the United Earth Council has decided to accept your terms. We surrender unconditionally. We will disable our weapons and prepare for Zephyrian occupation." The transmission reached the alien flagship, where Kethvar watched with satisfaction. Another primitive species had seen reason. The conquest of Earth would proceed smoothly, just like all the others. "Begin occupation deployment," he ordered his subordinates. "Move the fleet into atmospheric positions. I want ships over every major population center within 6 hours." On Liberty Prime Station, Captain Morrison received orders to power down all weapons and open communication channels to Zephyrian control. He passed the commands to his crew with a heavy heart, knowing that most of them believed they were really surrendering. "Sir?" Lieutenant Foster asked quietly. "Are we really just giving up?" Morrison looked at his young officer. She had joined the service to defend Earth, not to watch it fall without a fight, but Morrison had received other orders through secure channels that Foster didn't know about. "Follow your orders, Lieutenant," he said. and trust that sometimes things are more complicated than they seem. Throughout the solar system, human ships powered down their weapons and broadcast surrender signals. Cargo haulers moved away from shipping lanes. Mining stations went silent. Patrol boats returned to base. To Zephyrian sensors, it looked like a beaten civilization preparing for occupation. But in the darkness between worlds, ships that didn't appear on any official registry continued their silent approach. Commander Paul Bennett stood on the bridge of the UES Shadow's Edge, watching his tactical display as hundreds of Black Armada vessels moved into attack positions. "All ships report ready," his communications officer announced. "The fleet is in position." Paul nodded. His ship was equipped with phase shift technology that made it invisible to conventional sensors. Around him, an entire squadron of similar vessels waited in the void near Jupiter. Similar squadrons were positioned throughout the solar system, each one invisible to Zephyrian detection. On Earth, Dr. Maya Singh worked in hidden command centers throughout the planet. Weapons systems disguised as communication towers began their startup sequences. Defense networks camouflaged as civilian, infrastructure-activated dormant programs. The Zephyrians thought they were occupying a defenseless world. They had no idea they were surrounding themselves with the most advanced military technology humanity had ever built. Colonel Amy Foster coordinated with resistance cells in major cities. Underground bunkers that had been built over decades opened, their sealed doors. Weapons that had waited years for this moment were brought online. Ordinary citizens who had trained in secret for this day received their final orders. "Remember," Amy broadcast on encrypted channels, "wait for the signal. No matter what happens, no matter how scared you get, wait for the signal." Admiral Kate Sullivan watched the deployment from her flagship, the UES Defiance. The massive vessel hung in the shadow of Saturn's rings, completely invisible to Zephyrian sensors. Around her, the bulk of the Black Armada waited in similar hiding places throughout the outer system. "Enemy fleet is moving into final positions," her tactical officer reported. "They're spreading out over populated areas just like we predicted." Kate smiled coldly. The Zephyrians were making the same mistake they had made with 17 other species. They assumed that victory was already theirs and let their guard down during occupation deployment. "Signal all fleet commanders," she ordered. "Begin final approach. Maintain stealth until the attack order." Thousands of invisible ships began moving toward Earth. They used the planet's own magnetic field to mask their approach. They hid behind asteroids and space debris. They used every technique the refugee species had taught them over 50 years of preparation. Captain Morrison received a priority message on a channel that officially didn't exist. The message was short. "Sunrise in 1 hour." He walked to his station's observation deck and looked out at the Zephyrian ships positioning themselves over Earth. The massive alien vessels were beautiful in their own way, but they represented everything humanity refused to become. They were the ships of conquerors, built to subjugate and enslave. Soon, they would face ships built by the free. On the planet below, President Carter was in the Mount Cheyenne Command Center watching the real deployment unfold. Hundreds of displays showed Black Armada ships moving into attack positions. Each vessel was a masterpiece of human engineering combined with alien technology, built by people who refused to accept that Earth would ever bow to foreign masters. "All squadrons report ready," Kate's voice came through the secure channel. "We can begin the attack at your order, Madam President." Lisa looked around at the faces of the people who had kept this secret for decades. Scientists who had worked their entire careers for this moment. Engineers who had built impossible ships in hidden factories. Soldiers who had trained for a war they hoped would never come. "The Zephyrians wanted an answer," she said quietly. "Let's give them one they'll never forget." Admiral Kethvar stood on his command deck watching human cities surrender below. His ships were perfectly positioned to control every major population center on the planet. The humans had submitted, just like all the others. Soon Earth would be another productive slave world in the growing Zephyrian Empire. He began composing his victory message to the home fleet when his sensor officer called out in alarm. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. Something's happening." Kethvar turned to his displays, just as space around Earth erupted in brilliant flashes of light. Ships materialized from nowhere, their black hulls gleaming with weapons that no Zephyrian had ever seen before. The Black Armada had revealed itself, and humanity's real war for independence was about to begin. The moment Admiral Kethvar began broadcasting his victory message to the Zephyrian Empire, 10,000 human warships dropped their stealth fields and appeared from the void. The UES Shadow's Edge materialized less than a kilometer from the alien flagship, its quantum cannons already charging. Commander Paul Bennett smiled as he gave the order that would change galactic history. "All weapons, fire!" The quantum cannons unleashed beams of pure energy that tore through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. The alien flagship's hull cracked and split as weapons designed by 3 different refugee species struck in perfect coordination. Kethvar had just enough time to see his bridge explode before the command section of his ship vaporized. Throughout the solar system, similar scenes played out as Black Armada squadrons struck their targets. The Zephyrians had positioned their largest ships over Earth's major cities, confident that the humans wouldn't dare attack with civilians below. They hadn't counted on weapons that could strike with surgical precision. Captain Morrison watched from Liberty Prime as the orbital defense stations revealed their true nature. What the Zephyrians thought were simple communication arrays suddenly bristled with weapons that emerged from hidden compartments. Massive railguns that had been disguised as structural supports swiveled toward alien targets. "All stations, this is Liberty Prime," Morrison broadcast on military frequencies. "Execute Operation Sunrise. Show them what Earth really thinks of their ultimatum." The disguised weapons platforms opened fire simultaneously, their combined barrage overwhelming. 3 Zephyrian heavy cruisers in the first volley. The aliens tried to return fire, but found their targeting systems jammed by electronic warfare specialists who had been planning this moment for decades. On the surface, Colonel Amy Foster's resistance cells activated weapons that had been hidden in plain sight for years. Anti-ship missiles launched from buildings that looked like apartment complexes. Energy cannons emerged from subway tunnels. Construction equipment revealed itself as mobile artillery platforms. The Zephyrians found themselves under attack from every direction. Ships that should have been safely in orbit were being struck by ground-based weapons. Vessels that tried to retreat into space ran into Black Armada squadrons that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Admiral Kate Sullivan coordinated the battle from the UES Defiance as her flagship led the main assault force. The massive vessel's experimental weapons tore through Zephyrian formations, while its advanced shields deflected return fire that would have destroyed conventional ships. "Enemy command structure is collapsing," her tactical officer reported. "They're trying to regroup, but our jammers are blocking their communications." Kate nodded. The Zephyrians had built their empire on technological superiority and overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy that could match their technology while using tactics they had never seen before. "Signal all squadrons," she ordered. "Begin Phase 2. Target their engines and weapons, but try to leave life support intact. We want prisoners who can tell the galaxy what happened here." Throughout the battle, Dr. Maya Singh's hidden systems continued their electronic assault on Zephyrian technology. 50 years of studying captured alien equipment had revealed critical weaknesses. Viruses designed specifically for Zephyrian computers infected their networks. Sensor spoofing made their weapons target empty space, while human ships struck from unexpected angles. The aliens who had conquered 17 civilizations found themselves helpless against an enemy they had underestimated. Human ships phased in and out of normal space, striking with weapons that bypassed their shields entirely. Ground-based defenses that shouldn't exist hammered their orbital positions. Commander Bennett led his squadron in a devastating attack on the Zephyrian Reserve Fleet. The aliens had kept 1,000 ships back from the initial occupation, thinking they might be needed for crowd control. Instead, they became sitting targets for weapons they couldn't detect until it was too late. Target. The command ships first, Paul ordered his pilots. Without leadership, the rest will fall apart. The Shadow's Edge and her escorts struck like ghosts, appearing long enough to destroy alien command vessels before vanishing back into stealth. One by one, Zephyrian fleet coordination collapsed as their admirals died in explosions of superheated metal and plasma. President Carter watched the battle unfold from the Mount Cheyenne Command Center. Displays showed Zephyrian ships falling throughout the solar system as humanity's hidden fleet proved its worth. But she knew this was only the beginning. "How many are we losing?" she asked General Rodriguez. "Casualties are lighter than projected," he replied, studying the tactical reports. "The aliens can't target what they can't see. Our stealth technology is holding up better than expected." Captain Morrison's station shook as a dying Zephyrian cruiser crashed into Liberty Prime's lower levels. But the orbital platform held together, its hidden armor plating absorbing damage that would have destroyed an ordinary station. "Damage report," Morrison called out as his crew worked to restore systems. "Hull breach on levels 15 through 20, Lieutenant Foster reported, but the reactor's stable and weapons are still online." Morrison looked out at the battle raging around Earth. Alien ships burned in the void while human vessels moved between them like sharks among wounded prey. It was the most beautiful and terrible thing he had ever seen. The battle reached its climax when the last major Zephyrian formation tried to escape toward the outer system. They ran directly into Admiral Sullivan's main force, which had been waiting for exactly this moment. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan," she broadcast to the fleeing aliens. "You came here to make us kneel. Instead, you've learned what happens when free people fight for their homes." The final Zephyrian ships died in a coordinated barrage from 300 Black Armada vessels. Space around Earth fell silent except for the occasional explosion as damaged alien hulks finally succumbed to their wounds. But even as humanity celebrated its impossible victory, deep space sensors detected new signals from the direction of Zephyrian space. The Empire had received Kethvar's final transmission before his death. They knew that Earth had not surrendered. Now they would come with everything they had. The Battle of Earth lasted 18 hours from first shot to final silence. When the last Zephyrian ship either fled or died, space around humanity's home world was filled with wreckage and the drifting hulks of alien vessels. The impossible had happened. Earth was free. Commander Paul Bennett stood on the bridge of the Shadow's Edge, watching recovery teams search through the debris field. His ship had taken damage during the final assault, but she was still flying. Around him, the survivors of his squadron reported their status. "Casualties?" he asked his communications officer. "We lost 47 ships from our sector," came the reply. "But we took down over 300 alien vessels." Paul nodded grimly. 47 ships meant nearly 2,000 dead crew members, people who had trained their entire lives for this battle and died to ensure Earth remained free. Their sacrifice would be remembered, but it still hurt to lose them. Admiral Kate Sullivan's flagship limped back toward Earth orbit with massive damage to her port side. A Zephyrian suicide attack had nearly broken the Defiance in half, but the ship's advanced armor had held. "Barely. Fleet status report," she called out to her staff. "We lost 832 ships," her aide replied. "But enemy losses are estimated at over 2,800 vessels. The survivors fled toward their home space." Kate felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders. 800 ships lost meant over 30,000 dead. The price of freedom was always paid in blood, but knowing that didn't make it easier to bear. President Carter emerged from the Mount Cheyenne Command Center for the first time in 3 days. The surface world seemed strange after watching the battle from underground. Above her, The sky showed the trails of falling debris as pieces of alien ships burned up in Earth's atmosphere. "Madam President," Dr. Maya Singh approached with a tablet, full of preliminary reports. "We need to talk about what comes next." "What do you mean?" Carter asked. "The Zephyrians will be back," Maya replied. "This was just their advance fleet. Intelligence estimates suggest they have over 50,000 ships in their home territory. When they come again, they'll come with everything." The reality hit Carter like a physical blow. They had won the battle, but the war was just beginning. Earth had revealed its true capabilities to an enemy that vastly outnumbered them. Captain Morrison supervised repairs to Liberty Prime while trying to process what had happened. His orbital station had been built to defend against pirates and raiders, not to fight in a galactic war. But somehow they had survived. "Sir?" Lieutenant Foster approached with a communication tablet. "We're receiving signals from throughout human space. It looks like our colonies are under attack." Morrison took the tablet and read the reports flooding in from human settlements across the galaxy. The Zephyrians weren't just targeting Earth. They were hitting every human world simultaneously, trying to crush humanity's expansion before it could threaten their empire further. But other signals brought better news. Black Armada fleets that had been hidden at distant colonies were engaging the enemy with the same effectiveness they had shown at Earth. Human ships appeared from nowhere to defend worlds the Zephyrians thought were helpless. Colonel Amy Foster coordinated relief efforts in the major cities where Zephyrian ships had crashed. The aliens had positioned their vessels over population centers, and when those ships fell, they had caused significant damage. But the casualties could have been much worse. "How many civilian casualties?" she asked her aide. "Preliminary estimates suggest around 50,000 dead," came the sobering reply. "But that's across the entire planet. Most of the alien ships were destroyed in space before they could crash into populated areas." Amy knew that 50,000 deaths was a tragedy, but it was also a miracle. The Zephyrians could have killed billions if the battle had gone differently. The Black Armada's precision weapons had saved most of Earth's population. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden shipyards worked around the clock to repair damaged vessels and complete ships that were still under construction. The secret facilities that had built the Black Armada now had to work faster than ever before. Admiral Sullivan arrived at the primary shipyard 12 hours after the battle. The massive facility was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid, invisible to outside detection, but bustling with activity inside. "How many ships can we have ready in a month?" she asked the facility commander. "Working around the clock, maybe 200, he replied. "But that's pushing our people to the breaking point." "Push them harder," Kate said grimly. "The Zephyrians won't give us time to rest." On Earth, President Carter addressed the planet and all human colonies in a broadcast that would be remembered for generations. Today, humanity faced extinction and chose to fight rather than kneel. "We paid a terrible price for our freedom, but we proved that no empire is invincible. The Zephyrians thought they could crush us with fear and superior numbers. Instead, they learned that free people will never surrender their liberty without a fight." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "This victory belongs to every human who died today defending our worlds. It belongs to every person who worked in secret for 50 years to prepare for this moment. It belongs to the alien refugees who shared their knowledge so we could defend ourselves. And it belongs to every child who will grow up free because of what happened here." But even as Earth celebrated, long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements from Zephyrian space. The Empire was mobilizing everything it had for a counterattack that would dwarf the initial invasion. Commander Bennett received new orders to take his squadron to the outer system and establish early warning posts. The next wave would be larger, better prepared, and absolutely determined to make humanity pay for its defiance. Dr. Maya Singh worked with refugee scientists to share technology with other species under Zephyrian rule. If Earth's victory could inspire other worlds to rebel, the Empire might face threats from multiple directions. We've sent the recordings to 14 different species, she reported to President Carter. 3 have already confirmed they're beginning preparations for their own uprisings. As Earth began to rebuild from the battle, the galaxy watched and wondered. For the first time in generations, someone had stood up to the Zephyrian Empire and won. The victory sent shockwaves through civilizations that had accepted defeat as inevitable. The Zephyrians had ordered Earth to kneel. Humanity had answered by unleashing the Black Armada. Now the real war for galactic freedom was about to begin. 3 weeks after the Battle of Earth, the first alien refugees arrived at human colonies in the Outer Rim. They came in damaged ships, fleeing worlds where rebellion had failed and Zephyrian punishment fleets had restored order with brutal efficiency. But they also brought news that changed everything. Commander Paul Bennett met the first refugee ship at Titan Station. The vessel was barely holding together, its hull scarred by energy weapons and its crew exhausted from a journey that had taken them across half the galaxy. When the airlock opened, Bennett found himself face-to-face with beings he had only seen in intelligence files. "I am Captain Vextar of the Corvani Resistance," the alien leader said through a translation device. "We heard what Earth did to the Zephyrian fleet. We want to join your fight." Bennett escorted the refugees to a secure briefing room where Dr. Maya Singh waited via hologram. The Corvani were one of the first species the Zephyrians had conquered, over 200 years ago. They had been slaves so long that most of the galaxy had forgotten they had ever been free. "How many ships do you have?" Maya asked. 50 vessels managed to escape our home system," Vextar replied. "They are old and poorly armed, but we know Zephyrian tactics better than anyone. We have been planning this rebellion for decades. Within days, similar ships arrived at human outposts throughout the galaxy. The Theron brought advanced shield technology and 300 ships. The Nexari offered their knowledge of Zephyrian industrial systems and 200 vessels. The Kalani arrived with stealth ships and the locations of secret Zephyrian supply bases. Admiral Kate Sullivan found herself commanding not just the Black Armada, but a growing coalition of species that had watched Earth's victory and decided to fight for their own freedom. The logistics were nightmarish, but the opportunity was unprecedented. "We're calling it the Liberation Fleet," she reported to President Carter during a secure communication. 15 species so far, with more arriving every day. Together we have over 4,000 ships. President Carter studied the tactical displays that showed the growing fleet. It was impressive, but she knew the Zephyrians had been building their empire for centuries. Their response would be overwhelming. "What about the main Zephyrian force?" she asked. "Long-range scouts report a massive fleet assembling in their home system," Kate replied. "Conservative estimates suggest at least 20,000 ships. They're bringing everything they have." On Earth, Captain Morrison worked with alien engineers to upgrade Liberty Prime's defenses. The Vex had shared their knowledge of quantum armor, while the Theron provided improved weapons systems. The orbital station was becoming a fortress unlike anything in human space. "These improvements are incredible," Morrison told the Vex engineer working on his weapons array. "Why didn't you use them against the Zephyrians before?" "We tried," the alien replied sadly. "But scattered rebellions can be crushed. It takes unity to defeat an empire. Your species gave us something we had lost." "What's that?" "Hope." Colonel Amy Foster coordinated training exercises between human and alien forces. On dozens of worlds, the different species had to learn to work together, to coordinate their vastly different technologies and fighting styles into a unified force. The Nexari fought with swarm tactics, using hundreds of small ships to overwhelm enemy positions. The Theron preferred heavy assault vessels that could punch through enemy lines. The Kalani specialized in stealth attacks and sabotage. Somehow, they all had to work together. "It's like conducting an orchestra where every instrument is from a different planet," Amy reported to her superiors. "But when it works, it's beautiful." Dr. Maya Singh established research stations where human and alien scientists worked together to develop new weapons and defenses. The combination of technologies was producing innovations that none of the species could have achieved alone. "We're seeing breakthrough after breakthrough," she explained to President Carter. "Weapons that phase through shields, armor that regenerates, itself, stealth systems that work in multiple dimensions. The Zephyrians have never faced anything like what we're building." But time was running short. Deep space sensors detected the main Zephyrian fleet beginning to move. The Empire had assembled the largest military force in galactic history, and they were coming to make an example of Earth that would be remembered for 1,000 years. Commander. Bennett led long-range reconnaissance missions to gather intelligence on the approaching enemy. His stealth ships could get close enough to count Zephyrian vessels without being detected, and what they found was terrifying. 23,000 ships confirmed, he reported during a fleet briefing, including 12 super dreadnoughts that are each the size of a small moon. They're not just planning to reconquer Earth, they're planning to destroy it completely. Admiral Sullivan studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. The Liberation fleet had grown to nearly 6,000 ships from 18 different species, but they were still outnumbered 4-1 by an enemy with superior technology and centuries of military experience. "We need more time," she told her staff. "More ships, more training, more coordination between the species." "Time we don't have," her intelligence officer replied. "The Zephyrian fleet will reach Earth in 6 weeks." President Carter called an emergency session of the Liberation Council, the governing body that had formed to coordinate the multi-species alliance. Representatives from every member species gathered in person or by hologram to discuss their desperate situation. "We can't match them ship for ship," she told the assembled leaders, "but we don't have to. We just have to make them pay such a high price for Earth that other species see they can be beaten." Captain Vextar of the Corvani spoke for many when he replied, "Our people have waited 2 centuries for this chance. We would rather die fighting beside humans than live another day as slaves." The vote was unanimous. The Liberation fleet would make its stand at Earth not because they could win, but because the galaxy needed to see that the Zephyrian Empire could bleed. As the Allied fleet prepared for the greatest battle in galactic history, signals went out to every corner of known space. The message was simple. Earth was making its final stand against tyranny. Every free being in the galaxy was invited to join the fight. The response was overwhelming. Ships arrived from species that had never been conquered, offering their help to the rebellion. Pirates and traders brought supplies and intelligence. Even some Zephyrian subject worlds sent secret support. By the time the enemy fleet approached the outer edge of human space, Earth was surrounded by the largest gathering of free ships in galactic history. 7,000 vessels from 23 species, all united by a simple belief that freedom was worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. The Zephyrians had come to crush a human rebellion. Instead, they found themselves facing a galactic revolution. The Zephyrian revenge fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a wall of death. 23,000 ships stretched across space in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with weapons designed to turn entire worlds into ash. At their center, the 12 super dreadnoughts looked like moving cities, each one bristling with enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Admiral Kate Sullivan watched their approach from the bridge of the Defiance, now serving as flagship for the Liberation Fleet. Around her, 7,000 ships from 23 species waited in carefully planned formations. It was the largest gathering of free vessels in galactic history, but they were still outnumbered more than 3-1. "All ships report ready," her communications officer announced. "The fleet is in position." Kate nodded, studying the tactical display that showed both forces. The Zephyrians were advancing in their traditional formation, designed to overwhelm defenders with massive firepower. They had used the same tactics to conquer 17 species. Today they would learn that the 18th had learned from all their predecessors' mistakes. Emperor Zethkar himself commanded the Zephyrian fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The massive super dreadnought was over 30 kilometers long and carried enough weapons to destroy a star system. He had come personally to oversee humanity's destruction. "These primitive beings dare to resist the Empire," he declared to his assembled admirals. "Today we will make an example that will be remembered for 10,000 years. No species will ever again believe they can stand against Zephyrian might." Commander Paul Bennett positioned his stealth squadron in the asteroid belt, invisible to enemy sensors but ready to strike. His ships had been upgraded with alien technology that made them even harder to detect. The Zephyrians had no idea that death waited in the shadows. "Remember the plan," he told his pilots. "We hit their command ships fast and hard, then vanish, before they can respond. Confusion is our greatest weapon." On Earth, Captain Morrison coordinated the planet's defenses from Liberty Prime. The orbital station had been transformed into a fortress bristling with weapons from a dozen different species. Around the planet, hidden defense platforms prepared to reveal themselves when the battle began. "All civilian populations are in underground shelters," Lieutenant Foster reported. "The evacuation is complete." Morrison nodded grimly. Unlike the first battle, there would be no civilians in orbit during this fight. Everyone knew that Earth might not survive what was coming. Dr. Maya Singh worked in the Mount Cheyenne Command Center, coordinating the electronic warfare systems that would be crucial to the battle. Alien hackers worked alongside human specialists to prepare viruses and jamming programs designed to cripple Zephyrian communications. "How long until they reach Earth?" President Carter asked. 6 hours at current speed," Maya replied. "But they're likely to slow down and probe our defenses first. The Emperor wants to savor his victory." Colonel Amy Foster commanded ground-based resistance cells that would fight if the Zephyrians managed to land troops. Hidden weapons caches and underground bunkers formed a network that could continue fighting even if the orbital battle was lost. "We won't make it easy for them," she told her soldiers. "Every meter of Earth they want, they'll have to pay for in blood." The first engagement began when Zephyrian scout ships encountered the outer perimeter of the Liberation Fleet. Corvani, vessels built for speed and stealth, harassed the enemy scouts while transmitting false sensor data to confuse Zephyrian intelligence. "Enemy scouts are reporting minimal defenses," Admiral Sullivan's intelligence officer announced. "They think we only have about 2,000 ships." Kate smiled coldly. The Liberation Fleet had learned the art of deception from humanity's example. Hidden squadrons waited throughout the solar system, ready to appear when the enemy committed to their attack. Emperor Zethkar studied the reports from his scouts with satisfaction. The rebels had gathered a respectable force, but nothing that could stand against the full might of the Empire. He ordered his fleet to advance in battle. "Formation. All ships, prepare for systematic destruction of enemy forces," he commanded. "Leave the planet itself intact. I want the survivors to rebuild their world as a monument to Zephyrian power." The main battle began when the first Zephyrian assault wave encountered Admiral Sullivan's forward squadrons. Theron heavy cruisers traded massive energy blasts with alien dreadnoughts, while Nexari swarm fighters swarmed around larger enemy vessels like angry insects. "First wave is engaging," Sullivan's tactical officer reported. "We're taking heavy casualties but holding the line." The Liberation Fleet fought with desperate courage, knowing that defeat meant the end of freedom for their species. Corvani ships rammed Zephyrian vessels when their weapons failed. Vex captains held their positions even as their ships burned around them. Human Black Armada vessels phased in and out of normal space, striking with precision weapons that bypassed enemy shields. Commander Bennett led his stealth squadrons in a devastating attack on Zephyrian command ships. The Shadow's Edge materialized behind the enemy flagship and unleashed quantum torpedoes that tore through the vessel's armor like paper. "Target their communications arrays," Bennett ordered his pilots. "If we can blind them, the rest of the fleet becomes easier targets." The battle raged for hours as the two massive fleets tore each other apart. Space became filled with debris and radiation as thousands of ships from both sides died in explosions of metal and plasma. The Zephyrians pushed forward through sheer weight of numbers while the Liberation fleet used superior tactics and coordination. But slowly, inevitably, the Empire's numerical advantage began to tell. Liberation fleet squadrons were overwhelmed and destroyed despite their heroic resistance. The defensive line began to fall back toward Earth itself. "We've lost over half our ships," Admiral Sullivan's aide reported grimly. "The enemy is breaking through our outer defenses." Kate looked at the tactical display showing the approaching Zephyrian fleet. They had taken heavy losses, but they still had over 15,000 ships remaining. The Liberation fleet was down to fewer than 3,000 vessels. "Signal all remaining ships," she ordered. "Fall back to Earth orbit. It's time for the final stand." As the battered remnants of the Liberation fleet gathered around humanity's home world, Emperor Zethkar prepared for his moment of ultimate triumph. Earth lay before him, defended by a handful of surviving rebels who still refused to surrender. "Today, the galaxy learns the price of defying the Empire," he declared as his super dreadnoughts moved into bombardment position. "Let the destruction of Earth serve as a lesson to any who might follow their example." But as the Zephyrian fleet closed in for the final assault, they had no idea that Earth's greatest surprises were yet to be revealed. Emperor Zethkar stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion as his fleet moved into position around Earth. The planet looked peaceful from space, its blue oceans and white clouds hiding the desperate preparations taking place on its surface. Soon, it would be nothing but glowing ash, a monument to the futility of resisting Zephyrian power. "Begin planetary bombardment," he ordered his weapons officers. "I want every major city destroyed within the hour." But as the super dreadnoughts powered up their planet-killing weapons, Admiral Kate Sullivan gave the order that would change everything. "Activate the planetary defense grid. Show them what 50 years of preparation really looks like." Earth's surface suddenly erupted with weapons fire as thousands of hidden installations revealed themselves. What the Zephyrians had thought were mountains and forests were actually massive defense platforms that had been built and camouflaged over decades. The planet itself became a weapon, energy beams powerful enough to crack moon-sized asteroids lanced up from Earth's surface, striking the super dreadnoughts before they could complete their bombardment. The massive alien vessels, designed to be invulnerable to any conventional weapon, found their shields failing under the coordinated assault. Emperor Zethkar watched in shock as his flagship shuddered under impacts that should have been impossible. How is this possible? No planetary defense system should be able to penetrate our armor. Dr. Maya Singh smiled grimly as she watched the battle unfold from the Mount Cheyenne Command Center. The weapons now firing at the Zephyrian fleet represented the combined knowledge of 18 alien species, all focused on one goal: the destruction of the empire that had enslaved them. "The Corvani taught us how to build quantum disruptors," she explained to President Carter. "The Theron showed us how to focus energy beams through dimensional barriers. The Vex gave us targeting computers that can predict enemy movements. We've had 50 years to prepare for this moment." Captain Morrison coordinated the orbital battle from Liberty Prime as the station's newly revealed weapons joined the planetary barrage. The facility that had started as a simple defense platform was now the command center for the most sophisticated military operation in galactic history. "Enemy super dreadnought taking critical damage," Lieutenant Foster reported as she watched one of the massive alien vessels begin to break apart. Their shields are failing across the board, but the planetary defenses were only the beginning. As the Zephyrian fleet reeled from the surface bombardment, space around Earth filled with new ships as the real Black Armada finally revealed itself. Commander Paul Bennett had been holding 5,000 vessels in reserve, hidden in Dimensional. pockets that even the most advanced sensors couldn't detect. Now they emerged all at once, appearing inside the Zephyrian formation where they could do maximum damage. All ships, this is Bennett, execute Operation Final Strike for Earth, for freedom. For every world the Empire has enslaved. The reserve fleet struck with weapons that had been designed specifically to counter Zephyrian technology. Phase torpedoes passed through enemy shields to detonate inside alien hulls. Quantum mines appeared throughout the enemy formation, their explosions tearing holes in space itself. Emperor Zethkar realized with growing horror that he had fallen into a trap more sophisticated than anything he had ever encountered. The humans hadn't just prepared to defend Earth. They had turned the entire solar system into a weapon designed to destroy his empire. "Retreat," he ordered his remaining ships. "Signal the home fleet. Tell them." His words were cut off as the Shadow's Edge materialized directly above the Eternal Dominion. Commander Bennett's flagship had been saving its most powerful weapon for this moment. The quantum singularity cannon fired once, creating a micro-black hole that consumed the Emperor's ship in seconds. Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, similar scenes played out as Liberation fleet vessels struck with coordinated precision. The aliens, who had conquered 17 species, found themselves helpless against enemies who had learned from every defeat, every victory, every tactical mistake in galactic history. Admiral Sullivan watched the battle turn from her command center as reports flooded in from across the solar system. "Enemy fleet is in full retreat. We're tracking less than 3,000 surviving ships." President Carter felt tears streaming down her face as she realized what they had accomplished. The Zephyrian Empire, which had seemed invincible just hours ago, was broken and fleeing from human space. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Over half the Liberation fleet had been destroyed in the fighting. Entire species had sacrificed their last ships to ensure the Empire's defeat. The debris field around Earth would serve as a memorial to their courage for generations. Colonel Amy Foster emerged from underground bunkers as the all-clear signals went out across Earth. The planet had survived, but the scars of battle were visible everywhere. Crashed alien ships burned in forests and cities. The sky was filled with falling debris that painted streaks of light across the heavens. As news of the victory spread throughout the galaxy, something unprecedented happened. On worlds that had been enslaved for centuries, rebellions erupted. As species that had given up hope suddenly saw that the Empire could be defeated, the Zephyrian homeworlds found themselves under attack from within as their own subject populations rose up. The empire that had seemed eternal began to crumble as its foundation of fear and intimidation collapsed. Dr. Maya Singh worked with the surviving alien refugees to establish a new galactic council based on freedom and cooperation rather than conquest and slavery. The Liberation Fleet became the foundation for a new alliance that would help other species achieve their independence. Commander Bennett, promoted to admiral after his heroic actions, led expeditions to liberate the remaining Zephyrian slave worlds. Each victory inspired more rebellions, creating a cascade effect that spread throughout the galaxy. Captain Morrison supervised the rebuilding of Earth's defenses, knowing that other threats might emerge to challenge the new galactic order. But for the first time in generations, the galaxy was moving toward freedom rather than tyranny. A year after the Battle of Earth, President Carter stood before representatives of 43 species at the First Galactic Liberation Congress. The assembly was being held on Earth, which had become a symbol of hope for every being who dreamed of freedom. "The Zephyrians ordered Earth to kneel," she told the gathered delegates. "We answered by showing the galaxy that no one has to live in chains. Today, we begin building a future where every species can determine its own destiny." The applause that followed could be heard across the solar system, a sound of celebration that marked the beginning of a new age. The galaxy was free, and it would never kneel again.